Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel, and Mirz Hashem today. One second. Okay, that's better. And Mirz Hashem today, we will be learning Daf Ayin Beis. Nope. Mirz Hashem today, we will be learning Daf Ayin Beis Amud Beis. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today on the very bottom line of the Shulchan Aruch on Daf Ayin Beis Amud Aleph, Siman Reish Tzadik Zayin Sif Gimel. Our learning should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael Hanesunim B'Tzaru B'Shivya Ha'imdim Bein B'Yom U'Bein B'Yabasha Ha'Makom Yirachem Aleihem V'Yetziah Mitzaru L'Rvacha Me'Afelu La'Oira Mishiba L'Geula Hashta B'Golo V'Zman Kariv V'Namar Amen. Our learning should be a schus Refuah Shalema for Tzvi Ben Le'Amirim for Yitzchak Baruch Ben Rachel Shalva for Chava Hadassah Bas Rezel Serel. And our learning should be a schus for Yisrael ben Rachel, Yonis ben Michal, and Yoel ben Michal. The Rebbeinu Shalom should watch over them, together with all of our brothers and sisters who find themselves in harm's way. B'chol makom shehem. Says the Mechaber, Reish Tzadik Zayin Sif Gimel. We are continuing to discuss the halachas of besamim, the berei mine besamim, the berachah that we make over pleasant-smelling substances as part of Havdalah on Motzi Shabbos. Says the Mechaber, Sakim Maleim besamim. This essentially is a sachet. You have a little pouch that's full of aromatic spices or aromatic substances, and they would commonly take these sachets, shemesimim ha'ovdei kechavim toich kankane hayayin. The ovdei kechavim, the Einam Yehudim, especially apparently idol worshippers or other Einam Yehudim, would take these aromatic sachets and they would put them into jugs of wine or pitchers of wine in order to create an aromatic wine. The Mechaber says, even though there is no isser of stam yenam involved in smelling this pouch. So you take this pouch of aromatics, the non-Jew, the Eina Yehudi, took this pouch of aromatics and he soaked it in his pitcher of wine. Now, the Eina Yehudi's pitcher of wine is Aser Bahana. We're not allowed to derive any benefit or pleasure from the Eina Yehudi's barrel or pitcher of wine because it's Stam Yenam. And the Chachamim were geyser on Stam Yenam. The Chachamim made a decree against our deriving benefit or pleasure from the Stam Yenam of Einam Yehudim. They made a gzeira. It's Aser Bahana. So now, they took this sachet, they put it into their wine. Now they removed the sachet from the wine. Are you allowed to smell that sachet? The answer is yes. There's no isser of stam yenam involved in smelling the sachet. So that's why the Mechaber says, Alpha Pisha Mutter L'Ariach Behem. Even though it is mutter to smell that sachet, and there's no isser of stam yenam involved in that, still, Ein Mavdilin Aleihem, you are not allowed to make a berei mine besamim and use that sachet for the mitzvah of besamim by Havdalah. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut and run. L'ariach behem. You are allowed to smell it. Why are you allowed to smell it? She'ena yayin noisin behem tam. Because the Mishnah Berurah explains, and he brings this down from the Taz and the Gra. The Mishnah Berurah says, we don't really have to worry that the wine infused the sachet with a pleasant aroma. And now when you're smelling it, you're smelling the stam yenam. That's not the way it works, says the Mishnah Berurah. She'ena yayin noisin behem tam. The yayin does not put tam. Now, tam literally means taste. Over here, we're not talking about taste. Over here, we're talking about the smell, the aroma, the fragrance. So says the Mishnah Berurah, the yayin does not infuse the aromatics with fragrance. It wouldn't be the derech that the aromatics would absorb a pleasant smell from the wine. El adarab, it works the opposite way. Hein noistim tam b'hayayin. The aromatics infuse a pleasant fragrance into the wine. That's why they take this sachet and they soak it in the wine in order to create an aromatic wine. So that's one reason why there's no isser of stam yenam involved in smelling this sachet after it's removed from the wine. Because we don't really worry that the sachet has absorbed a pleasant aroma from the wine. And furthermore, says the Mishnah Berurah, and this is brought down, I think, from the Chuvas HaRashba, she'ein mechaven hamariach l'reach hayayin el reach hatavlin. When somebody does take that sachet in order to smell that sachet, he's not smelling the sachet because he wants to pick up the smell of the yayin. He's smelling the sachet because he wants to smell the pleasant aroma of the spices in the sachet. So there's no kavanah here for the hana of the smell of the yayin. Now you might wonder, okay, there's no kavanah, but whether he has kavanah or not, he is going to get that smell. So this is kind of like on Shabbos, a psik reisha. It's definitely going to happen. But obviously from here, what we see is that that's not the way it works by berachas hareach. By making a bracha on something that smells pleasant, we go after what your kavanah is. Your kavanah is to smell the spices, to smell the aromatics that are in that pouch. You have zero kavanah to be getting the smell of the yayin. So again, this is why the Mechaber says there is no isser here of stam yenam. We don't look at this and say you're getting hana from stam yenam, which would be aser. And that's why the Mechaber says it's mutter lahariach behem. But still, the Mechaber said, Ein mavdilin aleim, you cannot use this for your besamim besamim as part of Havdalah, says the Mishnah Berurah is cut in Zion. Why not? The mos hu legavaya, because the Mishnah Berurah brings down from the Beis Yosef that this is considered repulsive. Why is it considered repulsive? Because the bottom line is it does have stam yenam absorbed in it. You take this dripping wet sachet out of the pitcher or the jug of yayin, it does have stam yenam in it. Stam yenam is something that is considered repulsive. So we're not going to use it for the mitzvah of besamim by Havdalah. There's another reason that's brought down, exactly what this means that it's mos, which is that this is not something pretty. This is a used sachet that's all soaked with wine. This is not something that's mohuder. This is not something nice to use for the mitzvah of besamim, and therefore it would be inappropriate. Continues the Mishnah Berurah, Kasav Taz Khan, the Taz writes over here, Ulael B'Siman Ratio Zayin, De'ein Mevarkin al Reach Shebekeli, we don't make a bracha of besamim besamim over the aroma that has been absorbed by a utensil. Shenivla boy, it became absorbed in the walls of the utensil, al Yedei besamim shahayu by mikaidim, because this utensil was used to hold besamim. So imagine, you might have in your home a besamim holder that you've been using for Havdalah for 30 years. If you take it and you empty out all of the besamim from it, it may still have a smell of besamim, especially if you have, I personally have a wooden besamim holder. The wood absorbs the smell. So even if I clear it out completely from besamim, there's going to be a pleasant aroma absorbed in the wooden utensil. Could you make a bracha of besamim besamim on that aroma? The Taz says no, you cannot. The reason you can't is because there is no aromatic substance here. So if you have a wooden besamim holder that was used to hold cloves for 30 years, so the smell is the smell of the cloves, but there are no cloves present in the container. Therefore, you cannot make a bracha of besamim besamim. You would be making besamim besamim on a wooden keli. A wooden keli is not minei besamim. So the Taz says you cannot make such a bracha. However, but if you look at the bottom of the keli and you see that there's dust, there's some remnants of the clothes present, and this is typically what would happen if you have a keli that was used for decades to hold besamim. So yes, if you empty it out, but if you look inside, very often you'll see dust or some debris left over from the besamim. So then mutter levarech, then you can make a bracha, because then there is aromatic substance still present in the keli. Okay. Turning now to Sif Daled, second line down here in the Mechaber, Ayin Beis Amid Beis. Says the Mechaber, Na'agu levarech al hahadas kol hecha de efsher. If it is possible, says the Mechaber, you should make the bracha of besamim besamim over a hadas, a very specific hadas. The hadasim that you used on Sukkos. So this is what the Mechaber means. Na'agu, the minig is levarech al hadas, to make the bracha of besamim besamim on Motzi Shabbos by Havdalah, al hahadas, on the hadas of the mitzvah from Sukkos, Kalecha de'efsher, if it is practicable. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Ches al hahadas. Pirish, the explanation of what the Mechaber means here is the hadash dishalulav. He means the hadasim that came out of the lulav. Why should you use the hadasim from the lulav for Havdalah? Keva de isavid bechada mitzvah, because since one mitzvah was already performed with these hadasim, liavid be mitzvah achrita. There's an inyan to use it now for another mitzvah. We have this idea present in a lot of things that we do. For example, in Yonah D'Yoma, we're coming now to Chanukah. It's brought down, there are different minhagim on motzi Shabbos. There are those that light Chanukah licht before they make Havdalah. Of course, they first make Havdalah in Shemona Esrei, otherwise it would be usher to light the ner. But if you made Havdalah in Shemona Esrei, there are those that have the minhag to first light Chanukah neris when they come home before Havdalah. Why? The Mishnah Berurah explained, because we push off ending Shabbos completely. We push off making Havdalah if we have a reason to. But there are those that say no. There are those that say Tadr v'she'enai Tadr Kaidim. If we have two mitzvahs in front of us, one is a mitzvah that we perform more frequently, the other is a mitzvah that we perform less frequently. So the rule of thumb is that we give precedence to the more frequent mitzvah. So over here we have Havdalah and we have Chanukah licht. Havdalah is every week, so it's Tadr. So we do Havdalah first. According to the minig that you do Havdalah first, it's brought down that you should take the ner of Havdalah, and before you put it out, you should light the shamish that you're going to use for the Chanukah licht. Why? Because since you did one mitzvah of Havdalah with the ner of Havdalah, do another mitzvah with it. Use it for the Chanukah licht. We also have this, a lot of people have the minig, that they save the lulav, they save the aravis, and they put it away till Pesach, and they use it to burn the chametz. You did one mitzvah with the lulav, you used it for daled minim. By Sukkot, do another mitzvah with the lulav, use it to burn the chametz. So too over here, you used the hadasim for the mitzvah of daled minim. Now if you could take the leaves off, and you could use it for besamim all year round, mamish gevaldik. Continues the Mishnah Berurah, v'dafka b'shar yemais hashana. But interestingly enough, you could only do this on all of the other Shabbos of the year. V'loi b'sukkis. But on motzi Shabbos of Sukkot, you wouldn't be allowed to use the hadas. So it's motzi Shabbos on Chalamoid Sukkot. You're going to say, oh, I remember learning in Dirshu that if you could use the hadasim, you should use the hadasim. Bring me my lulav. I'll make the besamim besamim on the hadasim. No, that you're not allowed to do. Why, explains the Mishnah Berurah, the huktza lemitzvasai. Because we have a concept that something becomes muktzah. We're used to talking about muktzah in the context of Shabbos. My phone is muktzah on Shabbos. But there's another concept, and that is huktza lemitzvasai. When you take an item and you set it aside for mitzvah use, while it is set aside for mitzvah use, you're not allowed to use it for anything else. That's why the halacha is that noi sukkah. Let's say you hang a pomegranate from your schach. It's one of the shivas haminim. So you take a pomegranate, you hang it from your schach for noi sukkah. Now chalamoid, you decide you want to eat a pomegranate. You're not allowed to. Why? Because it's huktza lemitzvasai. It was set aside for the mitzvah of noi sukkah. Unless you made it tanai on Erev Yom Tov. If you made it tanai, then you can. We're not learning Hilchos Sukkah now. I'm not going to go into it. So too over here. Your hadasim on Sukkos, those are huktza lemitzvasai. They're set aside for the mitzvah of daled minim. It's not available now for use as besamim by Havdalah. This that the Mechaber said, we're noig to use the hadasim if it's practicable. What does he mean? That means that as long as the hadasim still have some smell, you use the hadasim sukkah's time. It could be that by the time Pesach time comes around, the hadasim are all dried up and shriveled, and they no longer have any aroma. So then you can't use it anymore. So that's what the Mechaber means. Hainu kalecha sheyesh by oid reach tzas. If the hadasim still have a pleasant smell, then mitzvah lechatchila lahader acharav. Then lechatchila it would be a mitzvah to use the hadasim for your besamim. V'chein kasa b'zayar. The Zayar points this out as well. V'smach ledavar, and he says you could see something, a hint to this, a support for this in a pasuk in Yeshaya. The pasuk says v'tachas asirpad yala hadas. Instead of a sirpad, I forgot exactly what a sirpad, what the meaning of sirpad is. I don't think I'm going to find it extremely quickly in the Tanakh. Let's see. Maybe I can find it very, very quickly. It's near the end of Yeshaya. Let's see. Yeshaya. Dirshu Hashem be motzi. Okay. Tachas hanatzutz yale v'roish. A natzutz is a thorn bush. So instead, in the place of the thorn bush, you'll have a cypress, a beroish, the tzachas hasirpud, and instead of nettle, that's the way art scroll, taichis sirpud is nettle. Nettle, yala hadas. You'll have a hadas. V'hoyal Hashem l'shem la'is olam lo yikares. Then the pasuk says, before that, the pasuk says, where is it? A little bit further. Ki chay amar Hashem. No. Ashrei enosh yasezois. Fortunate is the person who does this, who ben adam yachzik ba, and the person who takes hold of Hashem's bris, of Hashem's Torah. It says, Shomer Shabbos mechalaloi, the one who guards Shabbos and does not desecrate it. So you have these two psukim, Tachas hasirpad yala hadas, and Shomer Shabbos mechalaloi. So that's a hint that the hadas has a connection to Havdalah of Shabbos. Okay, so that's why we have a mechaber here that says if it's practicable, if the hadas still has a pleasant aroma, we should use the hadas of the mitzvah from the Daled Minim, we should use it for besamim. Now the Ramah, we didn't do the Ramah inside yet, but the Ramah is going to bring down a yesh omrim that says that you should not use an old dried out hadas. Says the Mishnah Berurah over here, continuing Mishnah Berurah is ches v'yesh omrim svir lahu, the yesh omrim which seems to differ with the mechaber. The mechaber says you should use the hadas kol heicha de efsher. The yesh omrim says it's not kedai to go use an old hadas. The yesh omrim of the Ramah holds the kevet shedis yavesh, once the hadas starts to dry out, v'nital mimenu ikar hareach, and really the main pleasant smell of the hadas is gone, ein levarich alav, you should not make a bracha over it. Now, the truth is that when you read the mechaber and the Ramah, it doesn't sound so much like the Ramah is coming to be chaylik on the mechaber, but the problem is that the Ramah, let's see the Ramah inside. Second line down in the Shulchan Aruch, middle of the line, Hagah. The mechaber said, Noagu levarich ala hadas kol echad efsher. The minig is to use the hadas if it's at all practicable. The Mishnah Berurah explained, what does that mean if it's practicable? It means as long as the hadas still has some reach to it, you should use the hadas. Says the Ramah, the yesh omrim, but there are those that say, De'ein levarech ala hadas hayavesh, you should not make a bracha over a dry hadas. De'ein meriach, because it doesn't really smell. Rak al shar besamim, rather you should use other types of aromatics for your besamim. V'chein nagu b'medinos elu, and that's the meaning in our regions. V'nirali, the Ramah says, it would seem to me, De'yesh laniach gam hadasim ha-besamim. You know what? Take hadas leaves and mix them together with cloves or other besamim. Da'az oisid alma. Now you'll be yoitz everybody. Your yoitz, the mechaber says that there's an Indian to use the hadasim. Since you did one mitzvah with it, do another mitzvah with it. You're also yoitz of the concern of the yesh omrim, not to make a bracha on a dried out hadas because it might not have a smell. Now you have no problem because you're making a besamim besamim on a collection of aromatic spices that contains the hadas leaves. So the Ramah says that that would be wonderful. Says the Mishnah Berurah, if you do not have other besamim, the Mishnah Berurah reminds us that if you don't have hadasim, you could make a bracha on any type of aromatic herbs or aromatic spices. The Ramah said that if you mix the hadasim leaves together with other besamim, does oisin kekule alma. Now you're fulfilling the maila of the mechaber to use the hadasim. You're also covering the concern of the yesh omrim. You have no problem making a bracha because you have other aromatic spices mixed in there as well. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Yud, does oisin kekule alma. Ayin betaz, the Ramah tells us, take a look at the Taz. Mishnah Berurah tells us, take a look at the Taz. Shakasav, who writes, Alma di Issa b'Torah b'Shem Rabbeinu Ephraim. The Torah brings down something interesting from the Rabbeinu Ephraim. Shahaya lo yizachuchis miyuchedes. He had a special designated glass keli. Shahayu bamine besamim, that he would keep different types of besamim in. V'haya mevarech alein, and that's what he would use for his besamim by Havdalah. So what's this big thing that the Rabbeinu Ephraim did? Rabbeinu Ephraim had a glass besamim holder that was miyuchad. It was designated for use by Havdalah for the barimine besamim. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah. Da'afta lahalacha yesh l'tzadeid d'yachal levarech barimine besamim. Gam ala besamim shayu menachem babayis l'tzarech tafshil. Really, says the Mishnah Berurah, and the Taz goes through this in the Taz. Really, you don't really need to have a special keli of besamim for Havdalah. When it's time for Havdalah, you could go to your kitchen, go to the pantry, go to your spice cabinet, take out a jar of cinnamon, and bring it to the table, and make a barimina besamim. Now, normally, if you smell cinnamon during the week, because you want to get the smell of the cinnamon. I'm not talking about you're baking a cake and you're using cinnamon and you want to give a sniff to the cinnamon to see if it's still fresh. In that case, you wouldn't make a bracha because your kavanah is not really for the reach. But let's say you come home and you're in the mood of smelling something pleasant. So you go to your spice cabinet, you take out the cinnamon, and you take a whiff of cinnamon. Then you would probably have to make the bracha of berachah besamim. But remember what we learned earlier. We learned earlier that on motzi Shabbos, anything that you smell, you make the catch-all bracha of barimine besamim. Now the Taz brings down this Rabbeinu Ephraim. What did the Rabbeinu Ephraim say? Rabbeinu Ephraim said, my minig is, I have a glass besamim jar that's miyuchad for Havdalah. Questions to Taz, why is Rabbeinu Ephraim telling me this? You don't need it. You don't need a special spice jar for besamim, for Havdalah. You need besamim for Havdalah, go to your spice cabinet, take out the jar of cinnamon, sit down by the table, make Havdalah, and make a barimina besamim on the jar of cinnamon. Like, why do you have to have a special one? And this is what the Mishnah Berurah says over here. He says, the Taz says, the aftalah halacha, halakha l'maisa, yesh l'tzaded, we should take the position. The yakal levarech barimina besamim, you can make a bracha of barimina besamim, gam ala besamim shayu menuchanim babayis, even on the aromatic spices that you have in your house in the kitchen, l'tzarech tafshil, for the point of cooking. Kevich and noitlan ata b'yadeh la'ariach behen. Because now you're going and you're taking the cinnamon for the purpose of smelling it. In that case, you make a barimina besamim on Motzi Shabbos. So why does the Rabbeinu Ephraim tell me that, I have a special besamim jar? The Chen Kasa B'Sefer Tosefes Shabbos B'Pshitos. The Tosefes Shabbos also says there's really no need for this. Mikamakayim Rabbeinu Ephraim also zel a mitzvah min amufchar. The Taz says it must be that the Rabbeinu Ephraim did this for a mitzvah min amuvchar, to do the mitzvah in the most beautiful way. Sheyiched oisa metchilo l'shem rayach mitzvah. He wanted to go the extra mile and have cloves or cinnamon or what have you that are meyuchid only for the reich of the mitzvah. The kachnon hagen rov olam, and this is the minig of most of the world, shebiyakted kli lazeh, that the miyachid a keli for besamim, the koirin oisai hadas. And interesting, the Mishnah Berurah says that the minig was to call the besamim holder hadas. That's what they called it. Al shem shayimanichim shabadaris arishayim hadas kidei lo riach. Because in the earlier generations, they were makbid to use hadasim, like we learned in the Mechaber. So it became that it wasn't get me the besamim, it was get me the hadas, even if it had no hadasim in it. It's a thing of cloves, but get me the hadas. That's what they started calling it. They started calling it the hadas. Okay, let's go weiter. There's more to talk about over here. Really, I have to bite my tongue because I really wanted to get into this Taz that talks about this question. I'll just throw an interesting shaila at you. I'm not going to give you a psak halach on it. It's just an interesting shaila. Some people have a shtick. Let's say you have company coming over, and really you would have liked to bake a fresh cake, right? If I knew you would have coming, I would have baked a cake. You would have liked to bake a fresh cake for your company, but you had no time. So you take the cake out of the freezer. But you don't want them to know that you took a cake out of the freezer. You want them to think that you baked a cake. So you take a keli, you take a tin, put some cinnamon in it, put the oven on 300, stick the cinnamon in the oven at 300, and it makes a beautiful smell of cinnamon in the house. Now the people come in, they think that you baked a fresh cake. Do you have to make a bracha on that smell? You put the cinnamon into the oven to generate smell. So, l'chayr it's lahariach. L'chayr you would have to make a berachah besamim on that. I'm not giving a psak halacha on it, but just food for thought. But there's a lot to speak about over here, but it's a long page, and I think we already might be struggling to finish the page, so I'm not going to go more. Let's go weiter. Sif Hey. Says the Mechaber. Mi she'enoi meriach. This became, unfortunately, a big shaila several years ago during the COVID crisis. Mi she'enoi meriach. Somebody who lost his sense of smell. He can't smell anything. Einem mavarech ala besamim. He can't make a bracha. Barimina besamim. So somebody never had COVID. He lost his sense of smell. He's sitting down to make Havdalah, and he's used to just part of the regular format of Havdalah. He's going to make a barimina besamim. But you have no sense of smell. How are you making the besamim? So somebody who has no sense of smell, he can't make a bracha on the besamim, ella, unless unless he has in mind that he has children around the table who are higia l'chinuch, then let's say 9 years old, so they're already higia l'chinuch, so then he's making the bracha for them. He has a chiyuv to be mechanech them, so he's allowed to make the bracha of bari mina besamim to be motzi them, even though he himself can't smell. Oy lahoitzi misha eni yadeya. Or he can make the bari mina besamim if there's somebody there listening to Havdalah who doesn't know how to make his own bracha of bari mina besamim. Right? There's a freshly minted Baal Tshuva sitting around the table. He doesn't know how to make the bracha yet. So you can make the bracha for him. He's going to be, you're going to be motzi him with the bracha. So again, what's the halacha that the Mechaber is saying here? You have somebody who has no sense of smell. Well, if you have no sense of smell, how are you making a barimina besamim? You can't do that. It's a bracha levatala. Oh, but if you have a 9-year-old boy sitting around the table, and you have a chiyuv to be mechanech him, and as part of Havdalah, there's going to be besamim, and the kid does have a sense of smell, so he's going to smell it. So you're going to be mechanech him. You're going to go make the bracha of barimina besamim for him. Your wife who's sitting around the table, or other adults that are sitting around the table, no, don't make the bracha for them. Let them make their own bracha. Oh, but what do you do if you have a freshly minted Baal Tshuva who doesn't know how to make the bracha? So then the Mechaber says you can make the bracha for him. The Mishnah Berurah is going to bring down that most people take issue with that last halacha. Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting it off. Mi she'ena mariach, somebody who can't smell, explains the Mishnah Berurah, hainu she'en lechush hareach. It means he lost his sense of smell. Ice cutting your bays, lahaitzi. Like this, he can't make the bracha unless he has young children around the table. So then he can be motzi them. Points out the Mishnah Berurah, first of all, if you're going to make the bracha on behalf of small children, after you make the bracha, you have to make sure that they actually smell the besamim. Otherwise, your bracha is going to be a bracha levatala. Says the Mishnah Berurah, cut Yud Gimel, oy lahaitzi. Then the Mishnah Berurah brought down another possibility. You have somebody around the table who doesn't know how to make his own bracha of barimina besamim. So then you could make the bracha for him. Says the Mishnah Berurah, kol ha'achroinim cholkin al zeh. All of the achroinim take issue with this Mechaber. The Mechaber is saying that you have no sense of smell. You have somebody sitting around the table who does have a sense of smell. He's gonna smell the besamim, but he doesn't know how to make his own bracha. Says the Mechaber, you could make the bracha to be motzi him. You could make the bracha for him. The Achronim take great issue with this. Now let's give a little hakdama, a little preface to this Mishnah Berurah so that we can move through it quickly. Let's remember. Let's talk about Kiddush on Shabbos. You have a chiyuv of Kiddush. All right. Let's say you were in shul and you made Kiddush in shul and you had Kiddush b'makom suda. You had Kiddush, you drank a revius of yayin, you ate a kazayas of cake, so you ate a Kiddush already. Now you come home and your wife needs Kiddush. So the halacha is that you could make Kiddush to be motzi har. How are you making Kiddush? Why isn't it a bracha levatala? Right? I mean, how are you making Kiddush? You already ate the Kiddush. How are you making Kiddush? Right? The halacha is not a problem. Why? Because of the concept of arvus. If I have a chiyuv to do a mitzvah, let's say shofar, right? Rosh Hashanah, I already heard shofar. Now, I'm going to blow shofar for somebody else. I'm allowed to make the bracha for him. How am I making a bracha? I already heard shofar. Why isn't it a bracha levatala? The answer is because since all of Klal Yisrael has a mitzvah of shofar. I have a mitzvah of shofar. He has a mitzvah of shofar. It's true that I was already yotze the mitzvah, but that person has a chiyuv to hear shofar. Because of arvus, I share a responsibility to make sure that he's mekayim his mitzvah. So I'm allowed to make the bracha for him. So that's the way it works by berachas ha-mitzvahs, by brachas that you make over a mitzvah. Now, how about a berachas hanenin? How about a shakel niyah b'dvarei over a cup of water? Let's say Ruvain wants to have a drink of water, and I don't want to have a drink of water. And Ruvain doesn't know how to make a bracha of shahakal. Okay, if I'm going to take a drink of water, I could make a shahakal, and I could drink water, and I could be motzi him in the bracha, and he could drink water. But if I'm not going to drink water, I can't make a shahakal and be motzi him. If I would do that, it would be a berachah of HaTorah. Why? Why don't we say arvus? Why don't we say that I carry part of the responsibility for his shahakal, so I can make a shahakal for him? No. Arvus doesn't pertain to berachas hanenin. You know why? Because Ruvain has no chiyuv to drink water. If he's going to drink water, he has a chiyuv to make a shakal, but he has no chiyuv to drink water. Arvus, there's no shared responsibility here. By shofar, there's a shared responsibility. I have a chiyuv to hear shofar, he has a chiyuv to hear shofar. Even though I heard shofar already, if he did not yet hear shofar, I have a shared responsibility to help him hear shofar, because he has a chiyuv to hear shofar. So I can make the bracha of lishmaya kol shofar for him, even though I was already yotze. But by a shahakal on a glass of water, he has no chiyuv to drink water. It's optional. He has no chiyuv to drink water. Therefore, there's no arvus that allows me to make a shahakal for him. Now, over here, by the question of besamim, the mechaber said, if it's time for Havdalah and it's time for the bari mina besamim, and there's somebody sitting around the table who doesn't know how to make a bari mina besamim, and the person who's making Havdalah has no sense of smell, so that's like making a shahakal over water and not drinking water, right? Again, let's compare these two cases. You have Reuven and Shimon. Shimon wants to take a drink of water. He doesn't know how to make a shahakal. Reuven is not going to have a drink of water. Is Reuven allowed to make a shahakal for Shimon? No. Reuven can't make a shahakal if he's not going to drink water. It's a berachah of HaTorah. I let him make the bracha for Shimon. No, there's no arvus, because it's optional. Shimon doesn't need to drink water. There's no arvus by something that's optional. So too over here. You're sitting down by Havdalah. Reuven is the one who's making Havdalah. Reuven has no sense of smell. So he's going to make a bari mina besamim, but he's not going to smell besamim. That's just like Reuven making a shakel niyah b'dvarei over water and not drinking water. Reuven's going to make a bari mina besamim, and he's not going to smell besamim. But he wants to do it to be motzi Shimon, who doesn't know how to make a bari mina besamim. Says the mechaber, you're allowed to do that. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Gimel, Kol ha'achrayim mecholken al zeh. All of the achrayim disagree with this. The servant, they hold, Dafka lahaitzi b'nei beisei aktanim hu deshari. It's only if you have kids sitting around the table, then even if you have no sense of smell, you can make a bari mina besamim to be motzi them. Why? Shemutal olav k'dei lechanchem b'mitzvahs. Because over there you have a chiyuv of chinuch to train them, to be mechanech them. So that chiyuv of chinuch that you have allows you to make the bracha of bari mina besamim for them, even though you're not going to smell the besamim. But you can't do this to help somebody who doesn't know how to make the bracha. Because you, the one who's making Havdalah, who has no sense of smell, you have no chiyuv to make a bari mina besamim over here. You can't smell anything. You can't be motzi them. Even though by kiddush and havdalah, we normally say that if you already were Yotze Kiddush, or you were already Yotze Havdalah, you can make Kiddush again, or you can make Havdalah again to be motzi somebody else, even though you personally no longer have a chiyuv, because you were already Yotze Kiddush or Havdalah. Shani Hassam, that's different. Shein chayva kol ish Yisrael, v'chol Yisrael arevim zeh bazeh. Over there we could say arvus. I'm mechuyev in Kiddush, I'm mechuyev in Havdalah, you're mechuyev in Kiddush, you're mechuyev in Havdalah. Even though I was already Yotze, I can make the bracha for you out of a sense of arvus, because of a shared responsibility that I have to help you be mikayim your chiyuv. But that doesn't work by besamim. Shehu rak minig chachamim. Let's remember, besamim is not like shofar. It's not a chiyuv that you must smell besamim on motzi Shabbos. It's a minig chachamim. Ve'ein tzarek lachzor acharav v'chutaleil b'sef aleph. In sef aleph we said if you don't have besamim, you're not mechuyev to go chase down besamim. So it's not a chiyuv. It's not like shofar. It's not like kiddush. It's not like the rest of Havdalah. The berachah of hamavdil b'kodesh l'chayil. Those are chiyuvim. So by them, it's appropriate to say arvus. Besamim is hu daimel l'chol berachas hanenin. This is like making a shackle on a cup of water. You're not allowed to be motzi somebody else in a shackle over a cup of water. If you yourself aren't going to drink water. And therefore says the Mishnah Berurah, if somebody already made havdalah, and he has a sense of smell, normal case, you were already Yotze Havdalah. Baruch Hashem, you're well, you're healthy, you have a perfect sense of smell. It's motzi Shabbos, and you were already Yotze Havdalah. Now you come home, and you find out that there are people home who are not Yotze Havdalah. Are you allowed to make Havdalah again? Yes, you are. Says the Mishnah Berurah, but in that case, uberech ala besamim, if you already made a bracha on besamim, ubala havdal pam acheres b'shvel acherim, and now you're making Havdalah, complete with a berachah besamim for other people who aren't yotziret yet, yoriach oid ba'atzmai pam acheres, make sure that you smell the besamim, kedei sheyuchal oid pam levarach berachah besamim. What the Mishnah Berurah is saying is, you might think that if you were already Yotze Havdalah, and you already smelled besamim, now you're coming home to make Havdalah for other people. You might think, when I make the berachah besamim, I'm not really making it for myself. I'm making it for them. Why do I have to smell the besamim? They're going to smell the besamim. No, says the Mishnah Berurah, you can't do that. That would be like making a shahakal niyah b'dvaroi for somebody else's drink of water. You can't make a shahakal niyah b'dvaroi for somebody else's drink of water unless you yourself are going to drink water. So too, you can't make a berachah besamim for somebody else so that he should smell the besamim unless you yourself are going to smell the besamim. And again, because this is not a chiyuv, it's only a minig. So this is not like shofar. This is not like daled minim. This is like a cup of water. V'da, and you should know, says the Mishnah Berurah. Damasha nehagin eza anoshim. The minig that some people have, and this is actually brought down by the Aruch HaShulchan. The minig that some people have, she'ein roitzin lotzeis beberachas haner v'abesamim she'omer hamavdil. There are some people that have a minig. I'm not going to go into why right now. There are some people that have a minig that when they listen to Havdalah, they're not Yotze with the berachah besamim and the berachah eish of the mavdil, of the one making Havdalah. They bedafka make their own bracha on the besamim and their own bracha on the berachah eish. Says the Mishnah Berurah, he takes issue with this. He says, first of all, there's a problem. Because if they're not Yotze with the bracha of the mavdil, then sometimes what happens is, the mavdil makes a berachah besamim, he smells the besamim. Now they start handing the besamim around. When this fellow gets the besamim, and now he wants to make his own berachah besamim, the mavdil, the one who's making Havdalah, is already up to making the bracha of hamavdil b'kodesh l'chayil, etc., etc. So the Mishnah Berurah says, la'atzman. What these people end up doing is they end up making their own bracha of berachah besamim and berachah eish. But when do they make it? When the one who's making Havdalah is making the bracha of hamavdil b'kodesh l'chayil, shaloi kedin heim oisim. Says the Chavetz Chaim, what they're doing is shaloi ka'halacha. Why? The kevan shehem yotzin b'havdalah, because they want to be yotze with the bracha of hamavdil that the one who's making Havdalah is making. But they're busy making a bracha of berachah besamim and berachah eish, so they're not listening to the bracha of hamavdil. Says the Mishnah Berurah, it's inappropriate. They have to be listening and paying attention to the bracha of hamavdil. They can't be busy at that time making the bracha of berachah besamim and berachah eish. And says the Chavetz Chaim, and even without that, it's another problem. Mitzvah yoser, it's a bigger mitzvah. Laseis kulam biberachasai. Really, it's a bigger mitzvah that everybody should be yotze with the bracha of the mavdil. For the bar merei eish, for the bar mina besamim, you should not make your own bracha, says the Chavetz Chaim. You should be yotze with the bracha of the mavdil. Why? The barav am hadras melech. That's an inyan of barav am hadras melech. When one person is making a bracha for a multitude of people, that's a bigger kvod shamayim than if everybody on their own is making their own bracha. V'loy levarich kol echad b'fnei atzmai. It should not be that every individual makes their own bracha. Now, a word of caution over here. When the Chavetz Chaim says that everybody should be yotze with the bracha of the mavdil, I have to say, though, in order for that to work, the mavdil, the one that's making Havdalah, has to have kavana, that he's being motzi all the listeners in the brachas that he's making, and the people that are listening to Havdalah must listen to the Barei Mina Besamim, they must listen to the Barei Ma'orei Ha'esh, and they must have kavanah to be yotze with the bracha of the Mavdil. A lot of people are just busy whatever. They're walking around or whatever it is, and they're not paying attention. Well, in that case, you're not yotze the bracha. And then when you smell the Besamim, you're being nena ma'olam hazeh b'loi bracha, which is shrek l'chazach. Ukid l'kabam b'simin reitz al chesef yudal. Sometimes you have a problem that you can't be yotze with the Borei Morei Eish of the Mafdil, right? Let's say you buy a simcha and it's Motzei Shabbos and they're making a big Havdalah for 100 people, and you're all the way in the back of the room and you stick out your hand for the Borei Morei Eish and you can't get any hana from the Havdalah candle. In that case, you can't be yotze with the bracha Borei Morei Eish that's being said by the one making Havdalah. Well, you yotze with his bracha, but you're not using the light. So in that case, later on, Motzi Shabbos, you're going to have to make your own Borei Morei Eish. So then you can't be yotze with the bracha of the Mavdil. If you can't use the light, in that case, you shouldn't have kavanah to be yotze with the bracha of the Mavdil. Rather, you should delay it until after Havdalah, when you'll have an opportunity to get close to the fire. That concludes Siman Reish Tzadik Zayin. Let's begin Siman Reish Tzadik Ches over here, which the Mechaber writes as Reish Ches Tzadi, because he doesn't want to write Rotzach. Rotzach would be to murder. A murderer is called a Reitzeach. So Rotzach would be to murder. So he writes instead Reish Ches Tzadik, which is Rachatz, which is to wash. La'olam, a person is always supposed to use refined language, and this is a case in point. Siman Reish Ches Tzadik Dinei Ner Havdalah, the halachas that pertain to the Ner of Havdalah, Ubay Tesvav Seifim. Here we have 15 Seifim, says the Mechaber Sif Aleph. Mevarech ala Ner Borei Ma'orei Ha'esh. By Havdalah, we make a bracha of Borei Ma'orei Ha'esh. We thank the Rabbeinu Shalom who created the light of the fire. We make this bracha as part of Havdalah, Im Yeshloi, if you have an heir. But ve'ein tzarich lachzar acharav. If you do not have an heir, you're not mechuyev to go running around to get an heir. If you have an heir, then as part of Havdalah, you light an heir, you make Borei Morei Eish. If you don't have an heir, you make Havdalah without an heir. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Aleph Mevarach al Haner. Why do we do this? Why do we make a bracha of Borei Morei Eish on Motzi Shabbos? Explains the Mishnah Berurah, Mishum detchilas priyasai heavy b'motzei Shabbos. The creation of fire was on Motzi Shabbos. Kedarina b'psachim daf nundalid amad aleph. The Gemara Psachim on nundalid tells us the Motzei Shabbos dasan HaKadosh Baruch Hu deya ba'adam harishain. On Motzei Shabbos, when it got dark, the Rebbeinu Shalom put the knowledge into Adam Harishan's head. V'tach an shtei avonim zu b'zu. He took two stones, maybe they were flint, and he banged them into each other. V'yatza mehen or, and a spark shot out from it, and he was able to make fire. So this was a gift. This was a matana, a machshava that the Rebbeinu Shalom put into the head of Adam Harishan on Motzei Shabbos to teach him how to make fire. Fire is the gewaltige Zach. It's the only, that's the original form of artificial light. It's dark outside. We can make a fire. Now we can have light. And this happened on Motzei Shabbos. Very interesting. On Motzi Yom Kippur, even if Yom Kippur is a Tuesday, Motzi Yom Kippur, we make a Borei Morei Eish. Why? It's not Motzi Shabbos. Why are we making a Borei Morei Eish? Explains the Chavetz Chaim, Neshu Ke'ein Havdalah. Because there is a similarity here, which is, Shekol HaYoyim Haya Asar Lehishtamesh B'zeh Ha'or, Af La'oichel Nefesh. Yom Kippur is a little bit unique. Yom Kippur is not Shabbos. Yom Kippur is really a Yom Tov. But on Yom Tov, you're allowed to use fire. Because remember, on Yom Tov, you're allowed to cook. But not Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, you're not allowed to use fire for anything. There's no cooking. So you're not allowed to use fire, really, on Yom Kippur. And now when we come into motzi Yom Kippur, suddenly the fire becomes mutter. And therefore it's appropriate to make a bracha over it. Therefore, das hayesh oimrim tzarich lachzor acharav k'moi lehavdala. Yeah, that's why we didn't do it yet. That's why we're going to see tomorrow that some people say that on Motzi Yom Kippur, while on Motzi Shabbos, you're not machzer achar ner. If you have it, you have it. If you don't have it, you don't have it. But on Motzi Yom Kippur, there are those that say that you should chase down an air for Havdalah because of this inyan. Okay, we're going to stop over here. We'll continue next time with Mishnah Berurah's Cut and Bays. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. Discuss of limud HaTorah should be Megan against Klal Yisrael. The Ran Shem should send Yeshua's refuahs parnaset sheduchim to all those in need. We should be zayichet to see the Bias Kal Tzedek. B'meherav Yameinu Amen. Be well.